Well, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight, and it's good to see everybody. Thank you for being here. And we are going to, I don't know if did we turn the air conditioners off?
Yes, we did.
Okay, well, I'm still going to ask if we could, everybody tonight, to please have our microphones on and up next to our mics so we can hear. And if it gets too hot, we may want to turn our air conditioners back on.
We're there now.
I'm sorry?
We're there now.
Well, if you want to turn them on, we can turn them on, and let's just try to make a habit of talking into our mics. I think we talk into our mics, we can hear and be able to hear over the top of the air conditioner too. So we'll try it and see. So I call the meeting to order. I need an approval of our agenda. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, do we have any public comments tonight? Okay, no public comments. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Tonight on our consent agenda, we have approval of our regular session minutes for July 11th, 2022, approval of a nursing services contract, and approval of staff wellness MOU. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brings us to discussion agenda item A, discussion of donation from North Carolina Natural and Cultural Resources. Ms. Barker.
Good evening. In your packet, you'll see that the donation from the North Carolina and Natural and Cultural Resources, we have received access points. They're Aruba access points. They partnered with districts across the state during COVID, and it was called NC Student Connect. And afterwards, they had excess equipment and sent out for districts that wanted to put in what they wanted or what we could get. And so this is what I put. I asked for more, and this is what I got, so beggars can't be choosy, so we're pleased with that. So we got 11 access points and 11 mounts, so we can get those mounted to extend our wireless in locations that we would like to extend it. So, any questions on our donation?
Board, any questions for Ms. Barker on the donation?
No, thanks for
No.
applying and getting those for us.
Yeah, good job on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to discussion item B, discussion of E-rate Cat 2. Ms. Barker.
Yes, sir. In your packet also, you will see E-rate Category 2. This is this is mainly on the infrastructure throughout our district. So we're focusing on building it up and replacing some dated equipment. So this year, we're focusing on 4 schools, or targeting 4 schools. We're replacing 22 Netgear dated equipment. So we're getting 22 switches. That funding was approved, and I also requested for 203 more access points. They're to replace our oldest access points that will no longer receive updates. And I'm also requesting for 600 cloud license to add our current access points and put them on our new portal so that they're all on the same portal. We can manage those. You'll see the funding requested. We requested $252,403, and there's a breakdown in line item 3, what E-rate will pay, and then at the bottom, the state will reimburse us that $50,000, so we'll have, there will be no cost to Stokes County Schools.
Good job.
Great job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and if I could get this moved to action tonight, that would be great. We could go ahead and proceed with that order.
Make a motion to move it to action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this will be action item B. I guess it'll be the E-rate Cat 2
Yes, sir.
approval.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound right?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
We have discussion item C, discussion of the milk bid. Mr. Brown.
Yep. Our current provider, H&S Dairy, had submitted increased prices above what our contract would allow, so we had to rebid, reach out to a few different vendors. Unfortunately, with dairy, it's really going to just be whoever's the local, especially in a small area like this where you don't have much competition. So they were the only one who responded, and I've included the price increases there on the spreadsheet. Any questions on that one?
Any questions, board? No. Mr. Randall, we need to move this to action as
I would
well.
appreciate that, yeah.
This will be action item C, 2223 dairy bid.
I'll make a motion to move that to action, the milk bid.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move the 2223 dairy bid to action. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. And discussion item D, discussion of Head Start meals contract.
Yes, sir. Head Start's a program that we currently provide meals for. We provided meals for them going back before with the free, universal free meals. We were able to provide those free just like we were to anyone else we were providing meals to. With that running out, we're setting it up as a catering contract. We'll provide the meals, they'll pay us, and then they'll get reimbursement on their own, so we don't have to worry about that. There's 4 sites. We'll be serving them 3 meals. They're asking for a 5-year contract with meal price increases if our reimbursement or their reimbursement goes up, so we can adjust that each year as needed. What's nice about doing it this way as a catering contract as opposed to getting reimbursed ourselves for the meals, if they tell me they need 72 units, I get paid 72 units, and I'm not having to chase down signatures or anything like that.
You need that moved to action.
Yes, please.
Fred, does this contract fall below what Dr. Rice can just sign it? Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, do I have a motion to move?
I make a motion to accept the 22-23 Head Start contract.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that'll be action item D, 2223 Head Start meals contract.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That brings us to discussion item E, discussion of capital outlay project update for 21-22. Mr. Goins.
Yes, board members, in your packet, you should have a list of the capital projects. Anything highlighted in yellow has been closed or completed. Starting down the list, the roof for North Stokes Piney Grove, you have a column there that we saying that's carryover because we're having to carry the funding and the project over, but the notice to proceed has been given by the engineer. We're just waiting on a date that they can get the materials and get those projects started. Moving on down to number 9, South Stokes heating system. We're carrying that over. We're going to see if they have another recommendation when they do the facility study. The child nutrition monitoring, we held off on that because they did a presentation with Verkada. We discussed that with Mr. Brown. We're going to go back with the original company with that. So we got that. We're working on that. The 2 maintenance vehicles, we only received 1 of those. The company actually canceled 1 because they couldn't get it manufactured by June the 6th. We're going to carry 1 of those over. The fire alarm at Piney Grove, they're working on that this week. Hopefully, they'll get that done either this week or next week. I talked to the contractor this morning. He's got some guys out sick and also working on another project. The freezer for South, we're expecting that around December, just on lead time on the freezer. So we're carrying that project over. The air conditioning for Auto Tech, we decided we was going to put that in the fire academy room, do the wall unit there. Where they're saying that probably around October before we get the equipment for that. Moving on down to King Elementary painting, that could be highlighted now. That got completed after this was turned in, so that project is completed. 22 and 25, we're carrying that over because Mr. Tedder didn't get those buses converted. London Elementary, number 28 on the second page. We've got that project 90% complete. We've got the ceilings in, the stalls in. We just got to go back and do a little touch-up and replace one of the toilets and stuff like that, but it's 90% completed. It'll be completed before school starts. The cafeteria tables, we decided to carry that over. Hopefully the board will approve the other cafeteria tables. We couldn't get them delivered before June the 30th. So we're hoping to, if that project gets approved tonight as well, we're just going to order all those tables at one time. The North Stokes track, I haven't highlighted here and put deferred because that was being paid for out of some other funding. But went up today. They have started that project today. They was up there today putting the erosion control in and starting to dig across the track where they're going to come across the track with the piping. They said they're planning on putting the piping on the interior and exterior first before they demo the asphalt. That way they can drive on the asphalt and it won't tear it up if it rains or anything. So they leave them there to the last minute before they tear it up. HVAC upgrades, number 31. We carried that money over because that was our originally to do a survey for our HVAC equipment, and now the county is going to do that for us. So we carry that funding over. Moving on down to our Ursa funding, we still have the ionization there, the window replacement, the water coolers. We did get those in. We've got all our elementary schools completed except 4. What we're doing there, we're going in and putting the touchless coolers in first. Plus we got Meadowbrook installed. Yes, ma'am.
Which 4? Just curious, sorry. If you don't have it, that's okay.
I've got it with me. I just got to get it. The ones we like is Lawsonville, London, Pine Hall, and Sandy Ridge. And they're going to start at Lawsonville tomorrow and work their way around to Sandy Ridge. Plus, we also got Meadowbrook completed. They were in that area that day. And so what we're doing, we're putting the touchless coolers in first. Going to get all those in, then we'll come back and put the spouts in. Because our goal, that way we'll know we'll have the coolers in before school starts.
Can I ask something about those coolers? Do most all the elementary schools have the touchless coolers now?
Every elementary school will get at least one.
So aren't they supposed to all be using it, or has the water fountains been opened up?
I couldn't hear that.
Has the water fountains, have they been opened up in some?
Oh, yes, they've been opened up
Okay.
for, yeah, quite a while.
So they have the water fountains and then the touchless. Okay, thank you.
And also, what's not on this list is the projects the board went back and approved with some funding that we had for the North Stokes project. We bought the mowers out of that. Well, that's completed, but we have the irrigation at South, West to do. That's carryover, and also the reel mower at South, the West Stokes floor stripping machine, and the West Stokes floor scrubbing machine. I do have the bid on the reel mower. Met with South Stokes on that. They had gotten a quote for that, but it was actually for, I thought it was a used mower to begin with. It was actually new mowers. So I'm going to get with them this week to decide. There's 2 options. They got one that's a smaller mower than what they currently have. But if they get the size mower that they currently have, they're going to have to come up. It's more than the $46,000. It was like $52,000 and some change. And they were looking to see if they could they might want to pay the difference out of school funds and get the same size mower they had.
And that's for used?
Sir?
52 for used?
That was new. It was a new John Deere. And so that was the same size that they had. So I'm going to get with them this week. They were going to decide what they were going to do with that. And then at that cost, we would have to bid that out, since it's over $30,000. Any questions?
Is that mower, we had we really tried to buy our other mowers inside the county. Is the John Deere coming from in the county, or do they go out of the county to look for the John Deere?
This was out of the county. I would go with our local, which would be our local, would probably Pofftown be the closest to us, Pofftown or Mount Airy. But both of them are the same. James River is the same one at either location. But
Why John Deere?
That's just the brand that they chose. My understanding that Mr. Clark was at a coach or athletic directors conference, and they'd had a demo down there. And this is the same company that services their reel mower now, sells these mowers, and that's where they got the price from.
So they were kind of allowed to go outside the norm of what was debated, sort of?
I checked with,
Mower
I checked with LTD and a couple other ones, they don't sell real mowers.
No, I didn't know anybody here local, I didn't know if James River will sell real mowers, I just know they're a John Deere dealer.
I know LTD had told me that they had a place that they could get a real mower, I think a Toro. So, we may want to check on that and just see if it's, compare that in price. And if we can buy it in the county, this board, I think, has, made it known already that we like to buy in the county if we can.
Okay,
If it's comparable, something that's, we don't want to short ourselves on equipment or anything else, but if it's the same equipment, same, it's going to work just as good as the John Deere, and we can get it in the county, I think we'd rather buy it in county.
well, if that costs, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Johnson, we would still have to bid that equipment out if it's $50-ish thousand, correct, since it's over 30? Have to do informal bids on that? Informal, yes, informal, I'm sorry, yes, informal.
Well, whether we're bidding it or not, I think if we can find a real mower in the county, then that may be what we'd want to bid out and bid it out and try to buy it in the county.
Yes, I think give our local.
Give our local people
an
a chance
opportunity, absolutely.
to sell it.
Did they check on any off-lease mowers through like STI? Because that's the Toro dealer that I think works with them.
The first quote, to be completely transparent, the first quote I got was kind of, I couldn't read it and understand. They just kept saying mowers and listing prices. This was used, that was used, but it didn't tell what was used. It just said mower, real. It didn't say the brand, the make, model, manufacturer. So I asked them to clarify the bids, and that's when they come back with this one. It was 2 new mowers. But I can get with them on that. Any other questions?
I guess, concerns had been shared about the delay in the North Stokes track project, you know what I mean? Living in that community, you know what I mean?
I've heard some
even
concerns
had-
myself, so.
Yeah, students come up to me and say, what can we do? Can it be put off till next year? You know what I mean? And I explained to them, we don't want to miss the opportunity to have a new track at North Stokes, but you have, as I would say, upset mothers of seniors who want all the, football games played their senior year. So I know there's a lot of folks disappointed in playing at other locations around the county, but I understand that that's all we can really do to accommodate the team with the delay in the project start that we haven't had a lot of control over in regards to contractors and supplies and different things like that, correct?
Correct. Well, I know if we put it off, it would cost us more money because we'd have to pay the contractor up to what they've spent now and then rebid it out. It would cost us more money to put it off.
Right, and I know that the board had a special called meeting like May 25th and tried to go ahead and hurry that along. But again, I did see on social media that some of the schools are trying to put out there and kind of give everybody a heads up of this ain't going to be a normal football season. This will be a different kind of schedule. We hope that they can maybe get in one home game, but I know that's impossible to predict.
Well, I met with the grading contractor today and the superintendent with the general contractor, expressed our concerns that how we wanted to get it in, and how when we first started this, we was talking mid-September, now we're to mid-October. The grading contractor assured me that he was going to do everything in his power to get this done as soon as possible. Like, for example, not going in and go ahead and just tearing all the asphalt off. If you tear it off and it comes a 2-day rain, it's just going to turn into soup until you got to let it dry out. But if you leave the asphalt in place, they can still run the trucks on it and do some things and tear it off the last minute.
Gotcha.
Talked about when they dig the ditches. I said, y'all gonna dig the ditches and fill them back in as soon as you dig them? He said, absolutely. He said, at the end of the day, he said, what we would try to do, he said, we'll even put plywood up at the end of the pipe, cover the ditch up, come back the next morning in case it rains overnight, and dig the plywood back out. He said, that way you don't have the delay of water being pumped out and having to let it dry out down inside the ditch.
Right.
So we're going to do everything that we can to.
And was there some delay in engineering, like figuring out how the track, I know there was.
Well, the biggest
was a
thing that really got us
level.
behind is where we had to rebid it.
Okay.
If we'd have had 3 bids on May the 2nd, that got us behind 23 days right there.
Ah,
When you look back at the schedule, that's what got us behind.
right.
It's where we didn't receive 3 bids. We had 5 contractors to come out that day, and I was confident. They all seemed real interested in the project, asked a lot of questions.
Right.
So I was confident we were going to get 3 bids, and when we only got 2 bids, then we had to turn around, which it took 23 days from May the 2nd to the week finalize it because, remember the board, it came in over budget. We had to double check to make sure it wasn't a planning issue with the athletic grant.
Right,
Once all that got approved, the board held a special meeting to
approve it.
it.
Yeah.
So what really got us behind was the delay. And also there was a delay on the concrete pipe.
Right,
And they wasn't ordered until they had a contract in place or knew the contract, when the board had approved the project, so.
yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you trying to hustle everybody up and everything.
trying.
Thank you very much.
And one thing that we can do is at the end of the project, or towards the end of the project, the asphalt has a 30-day cure time.
Right.
So they said they would work with us in that 30 days to block off the track, keep people off, and hopefully some games can be played then, so.
Again, North Stokes was scheduled originally with a 5-game regular season home schedule. They swapped one with a team anyway to make it a 4-game schedule. With the month curing time, there's a potential of getting 2 games in, and then the last game of the season, there's potential of getting that in. So even we're planning to use other schools, but in a best-case scenario, they'll still get 3 home games at North. We're working to try to make that
Yeah.
happen.
Thank you.
But we don't want to promise that.
Right.
Because we don't know what the weather's going to be. We don't know what another delay may be. I mean, you may have, and I could use wrong terms, an excavator up there that breaks down and they're waiting on a part to get it fixed, and can't get another one up there. So we're under-promising, but we're sure hoping to over-deliver.
Yes.
Well, I was talking to someone today, and they said, well, talking about, the games. I said, well, it'd be just like right now, us trying to predict, is the homecoming game going to get rained out?
Yeah.
I said, we can't predict that, and we can't predict, it's too early in the game to predict where we're going to be at that date.
Right.
But we're going to do everything to make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, board? Thank you, Mr. Goins.
Thank you, board members.
Brings us to discussion item F, discussion of ESSER 2, K through 2 Emergency Fund. Ms. Moore.
When we received the ESSER 2 allotment, and also we received an ESSER 3 allotment, which one's PRC 171 and one's PRC 181. And this board decided ways that we could actually budget those funds. The 171 actually ends in September of '23, so therefore 71 and 181, they kind of run together, so we tried to expend the 171 first. And when you all approve that, I'll just go over some of the things that was approved. Textbooks, LEP tutoring, the social emotional director, social workers, smart boards, technology, Chromebooks. We also, as a result of that, done some licensing keyboards, and I'll get into that. We approved elementary guidance additions, technology assistants, maintenance positions, and then we had an LPN nurse that was paid from another grant, and part of that will end up from these particular projects here. And then we came back during the year, and there was a training bonus that we pulled from this grant that the board also approved. We had window replacement, air purification, then this board added the water coolers. We had summer school, learning loss, and some unbudgeted funds at that time. Now, when you look at 171 here, our allotment was $2,951,230.67. And what we're looking at now, we will be carrying over the textbook part of that, which is $786,431.52. That plans to be spent in this budget year, and that will zero that out. What we use those funds for, we actually done the LEP tutoring for a year, the director for a year. We've done the smart boards and the Chromebooks, so the technology come out of this. The guidance, we'll go back to the PRC 181 and the technology assistance, that's where they will come from. So basically, and then that's how this money was, what the expenditures were for this particular grant here, with the understanding we would have the carryover for the textbooks. And that will exhaust those funds. Then the 181 will end in September of '24. We had an allotment of $9,294,044. Through this school year, we spent $2,045,905.91. And again, that's for the line items that you all actually approved that I just went over. to continue the positions that we have employed through September of '24. I've broken down the 22-23 budget, and you can see, to continue the guidance, the instructional technology, director of social work and attendance, school nurse, maintenance positions, and the LEP tutoring. That comes to $895,517. Then we would need to continue our summer school. We allotted the learning loss to the schools. We estimated that we would be doing the same figure for 3 years, which is the 560. And then I got with Karen to see on the technology and our estimate to replace the Chromebooks, some document cameras and servers. So we've actually increased that somewhat from what we thought in the beginning. And then the one item that we've added here after our director's meeting is the textbooks for science. And Mr. Rose can talk more about that. We have the water coolers that's already come out here. So our projected 22-23. On the water coolers, we actually will be paying for that, even though Ricky's talked about ordering them this school year. So that's a $3,560,000 for the 22-23 school year. And basically what you're doing is maintaining what you approved in the beginning with a slight increase of the technology and also adding the textbooks for science. 23-24, we would continue those same salaries. I added like a 5% increase to those salaries. We would continue our summer school, our learning loss allotment again to the schools, and again, technology for the $1 million. So there, our projected cost for both of them is $6,423,000. Now, that would leave us $820,000 unbudgeted. Now, I know we had the window replacement that we talked about, and we also talked about the air purification. That's not included, but if you increase the technology and you add the textbooks, that's basically going to offset those line items when we added the coolers and also the supplement part for the training bonus. Now, as we get into current expense, I know we've made some recommendations. I'll go ahead and say that now, and we can come back to that. If we moved certain number of custodian positions to this allotment, and I'm not saying we're doing that, I'm just saying that was on the sheet. If we did that, that would come off of the $800 and some thousand. And also, we mentioned, and I'm not saying you're going to approve that, the tutoring. If you move that from your local to balance your local, then the 60-some thousand would need to come off of this unbudgeted figure. But we'll get into that when we get into current expense. So in summary, that's where we stand with 171 and 181 at this time. Do you have any questions?
So when we figure everything we've got, right now we have unallocated $820,574.09.
Right. With a lot of projections on salaries.
With best guess based on what's going to happen. That's how we're coming up with that, and that money has to be spent by 2024, correct?
September of '24, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's basically where we stand.
Had we discussed those science textbooks in the past? Is that something I haven't?
Math was.
We done math.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's something that was added here. That was not in the original, but when we got into the math, Doug can speak to that, what brought it up about the science.
The science texts that we currently have are the same ones that I taught from during my time as a teacher. We have not updated since then. Many of the things that are listed in that are not accurate. And looking at our scores, we could use the additional support and going through and looking at those standards and selecting a text with a science committee, much as we did with the math this past year. With math this past year, we did select K-8. I plan to do the same process with math 9-12. And then with you all's permission, I'd like to look at the science as well so we get up to date and improve our STEM programs in our county.
As we finish up each year, we look at our test score data, we talk about needs, we talk about ways to improve. One area that is, as he said, that showed that something we need some assistance with, especially high school biology. And science is while it's not tested every year, what you do every year until you get to biology shows up in biology. And so when we talked about that and looked at this, we came up with this strategy to try to do this. We did that earlier last week, and that's why we wanted to present it to you tonight as an option for funding. Again, this is a draft for tonight.
Did you say that the science books that we have now are not accurate?
Oh, they're so old, so old.
When you go back, there are things such as Pluto as a planet, the number of moons around Jupiter and some of those concepts. That information is inaccurate. Now, our teachers,
Okay.
to their credit, are finding accurate resources
Right.
and vetting materials, but this will be a wonderful tool for them.
Okay.
What year, you said that we hadn't had science books since you taught, right?
The science books, I started teaching in Stokes County in 2004.
Okay. That kind of says it all, right there.
Yes, ma'am.
And I will say, we have to have a budget to DPI on this by August 15th, and I have to submit the budget like 2 or 3 days in advance. So just want to let you know our timeline on that.
Which we can work on a draft on it, and again, then at the August 8th meeting,
can amend.
we would need to approve one, but whatever we approve, we can amend afterwards. So if we want to put in and just say, we're gonna leave it the same as last year, but then, or we want more time to think about it, then during the fall, if the board wants to make a change, we can make an amendment then and move funds around, as we've done for the last couple of years, as you know, with like the water coolers and those items where we have made amendments.
Basically, what it is, we're starting all over this
Right.
school year. When June 30th came, what we had projected for our budget, that ended, and then it carries over, so we have to start all over again with a new budget. And then next June, same thing, whatever's left, we'll have to do another budget.
Okay. So none of this needs to go to action, does it?
Not at least until we have the next conversation about current expense.
Right.
Okay.
But
All right. Any questions for Ms. Moore?
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Moore. That brings us to discussion item H, discussion of school videos. Ms. Jessup?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Good evening, Board and Administration. The last work session we had, you all had some questions about that, so certainly wanted to give you a lot of more information concerning where we're at with that. We started a few years back, specifically, I think Mr. Rogers mentioned maybe 3.5 years ago. Of course, we dealt with COVID, masking, and all of that, so sometimes during that period, it certainly was very difficult to continue the pathway towards videos. But in your budget for 21-22 that was approved, you did put in the budget, as you may recall, $30,000 to either be for a public information person, marketing position, or contract service. So in your packet, we did include how that $30,000 was spent this past year. After talking with several other school systems that make up the Piedmont Triad Public Information Officers Group, knowing that we had a lot of work to do in Stokes County Schools to revamp and build that marketing foundation that we were missing in the district. After that consultation with those who've been down this pathway before, as well as the Piedmont Triad Consortium also has a national contract person, Tom Delap, who also gave some feedback as I continue to research and look at the best way to maximize our dollars. After that discussion with many experts in the field, the following then was determined after looking at several different marketing firms around our area as well as outside of our area. It was determined that Tiger Moth was that best company to provide what Stokes County Schools needs. So the following deliverables were developed by that group and are now available for use throughout our district and the school level. So here's where we're at now. We are to the point now with these deliverables that they've come up with, and it started with a research and discovery team made up of diverse people from within our school system who we felt had the best background and knowledge about our school district to help build our story. And thus, we now have a messaging guide, We have photo galleries that are very beautiful photos developed, a communications plan. They did a complete social media review and gave many detailed recommendations for building our profile and presence there, as well as a tactical approach that included things like downloadable enrollment flyers, and also thinking about video and how that probably would make up about 30% of the mix of our creative, and then that can be a tool that can be multi-purpose through our website, social media, editing video clips for digital advertising. Now, so far with the digital ads that started on July 11 at our last meeting, within 10 days so far, we've had more than 37,000 impressions. That's when the ad appears in front of someone, and we've had 216 link clicks. There's going to be a lot more data certainly forthcoming, but that's a very strong engagement coming out of the chute with our designated zip codes, as well as including 27045, which is in the rural Ohio area, and getting our messaging out there to encourage families to enroll. Now, we will also continue with messaging for teacher recruitment going forward for the district to pick up. One of the biggest things we had to do first was to get our website updated and a lot of this marketing foundation started. So I give a lot of credit to Karen Barker, Amanda Campbell, and that team who immediately, and that's one thing, board, you've got a wonderful team here. As soon as they knew the need and this company shared with what we were adding, you may have heard them say when they came in, presented last time, they didn't have to wait on information. People provided that information. So now we are at the point we are ready to do training with our webmasters at the school level, as well as those who are identified for that social media contact. We will be conducting that as a one-day training on August 31 to begin sharing with these folks our messaging guide, the photo galleries. All of these things will be able to be used by the district for years to come. So we've got that building block established. And now we are at the point we are ready to get these folks trained. Ms. Campbell has already put a lot of this brand messaging out there. We're continuing to increase our presence, and research locally, state, and nationally, board, will show that parents need to hear at the different stages of their child's educational journey. At elementary, they need to know their child's cared for, nurtured, and safe. Middle school, my child is accepted and feels at home there at that middle school. High school, that my child has choices and opportunities to prepare them for the future. So we did have a meeting then right after your July 11 meeting on July 14. Thank you, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Rogers, for attending that meeting at West Stokes High School. We also invited part of our team, those that could make it, from that initial discovery meeting with the Tiger Moth group. Out of that meeting, we determined that we would get the training going, and that, of course, is where we're going next month on the 31st. Now, in an effort to maybe think about taking away from some of the main job responsibilities of these individuals, because as these lists have come into us, it's your media coordinator. The principals do help some with the social media at a few of the very small schools, but for the most part, it's that media coordinator. So we are going to be proposing to you for consideration that maybe starting out, we already have 3 high school videos already completed, and I'm going to let Ms. Campbell, if she will step up and maybe show you a demo of that. And then we will propose for your consideration doing, for right now, 1 middle school video that will be usable at all 3 middle schools that, again, repeats over and over that brand messaging and our story so that parents begin to hear and see and understand that about Stokes County schools. And then we would also recommend that we come back and talk with you here in just a moment after you see this demo of possibly what a budget might look like for next year as we get this off the ground. Now, another part of our tactical approach will be to, after the digital ad campaigns, the training to repeat this marketing foundation out in our schools. would be to also begin to go out into the community more so. We want principals to go out there on tour because those are trusted voices in our school system, and that's going to require from them an investment of their time and talent. But we've got that talent, we believe, with their folks. And then flyers being placed in preschool programs, daycare centers, real estates, libraries. We have already done some of that as well this summer, and then continuing with emails to our parents and connected messages so that they can understand our messaging and what we embrace as a school system. So, Mrs. Campbell, will you show the board, and we would like feedback from you on where you think these ads should be as we work with Ed Leo in putting, or not the ads rather, but the videos. So here is West Stokes. But now, Amanda, was that the one we were going to put up near the middle on the right or left side?
So they told me when I talked to them that placement can go anywhere we want it. It can go, as long as it's below the name of the school, and the buttons up here are visible. So anywhere in this frame, it can go. And it will stay stationary, meaning that the person who's using the page can scroll and stay within their line of sight. We control the video, so we can change it at will. We don't have to have them, go in and do it. A lot of things on the homepage they have to go in and do for us, but this, we left the option open so that as these videos are made, we can change them. Without having to have any notified. And I have the sound down, but the sound does not start until we click the video. And that was a concern.
And with these videos, board, we would propose to you to consider maybe giving a stipend to the webmasters and the social media contact at the school level after Mr. Forrest Munden will train them, as well as Brooke Johnson, our new technology instructional coach that has just been approved. And we would propose giving at each school, that person, $1,000 stipend to perhaps maybe half of it be paid at, say, December or January, and then the other half be paid at the end of the school year. And then for Mr. Forrest Munden, who would be involved in a lot of this training and offering that support after that initial training on August 31, that we would propose he get a $2,000 stipend. Again, maybe half of that be paid mid-year and the other half at the end of the year after he has completed that training and support. So that would be a total of $22,000 if you go at it that way. Now, if you do still continue with trying to do videos for all 11 elementary schools, and then we had a principal on that committee meeting at West Stokes on July 14, Dr. Sam Jones, who suggested maybe we start out with just one middle school at Chestnut Grove Middle to build that video there, and then maybe replicate that at the other middle schools. But there was some concern even on the part of Mr. Munden that he felt like it would be almost an impossible feat to try to do this at all 11 elementary schools. But again, if you look at your marketing foundation and what we have established so far, we want these things like sparking new possibilities. Then I was trying to remember just some of those other branding. That's what you call repurposing your contact. Your branding information is repeating it over and over again. Anywhere you have channels and things that you can repeat those messages so that folks see, oh, okay, yes, that's Stokes County Schools, and that's what they represent. So, questions, concerns, suggestions?
Board, Mr. Rogers?
I've seen what Mr. Munden does, and I don't think 2,000 is quite adequate. I mean, I'm fine with 2,500 because he's gonna be driving this show. For the $1,000 stipend, we need to have some expectations, not just you have this position, here's your money. I'd like to see X amount of social media posts per week at whatever the appropriate amount is. But, I mean, it needs to be a trackable matrix so that we can say, okay, yes, you actually did the work to do this. Like, we know Mr. Munden is gonna be teaching the middle school how to do their own. So, I mean, I'm more in line with that. His job by far is more than double what everybody else's. And he's done a fabulous job with us in-house, so that's mine. And I still don't think 2,500 is enough, but this is Stokes County. We don't have a lot of money to play with anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, and that will be part of the training in terms of the expectations on how many times we expect to see social media posts updated, Facebook, web pages.
But I want it actually tracked by the schools.
Right.
So that at the end of the year, they can report back to us, Piney Grove did X amount of posts.
I think Ms. Parker's not hearing you.
I got an arthritic knee and I have to cross it over. It's killing me. I'd like to see at the end of the year, how many, whether it be media coordinator or whoever is the social media pontificator, how many times they actually posted. You know?
So if we're looking at 2 posts per week, we'd be looking at 80 posts for the school year and a 40-week school year.
Right.
To say that we're looking for 80 updates to the webpage, and we'd like for you to track that, and, you know, the schools to send in some type of report, whether that's quarterly or by semester, to say how many posts we did this semester, to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for.
Well said.
You've been saying it for 3.5 years, I'm starting to learn it.
Well, put it back up then. Oh, we see Mr. Tedder maybe the speed bump.
See, it's still at the bottom too, you know, the big video is still at the bottom.
Is there any way to have it just auto launch, auto start playing, and then when you click on it, it adds sound?
So you want it to auto launch and play with no sound.
Well, I mean, y'all just said people are always on their phone when they shouldn't be, and they're watching it, so we don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I'm just asking, is that a possibility? Because when you first launched it, it just says "We are West Stokes," and it wasn't go back out on the web page and come back in.
Amanda, what, is that a certain size, and excuse my ignorance, tile? So like, is that screen made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 16, yes, like a 16 tile grid?
Yes.
Okay, so like if you were to put that in the middle 4 sections, would that be, is that an accurate way to say, to do that, to say, to take up 1/4 of the page right in the middle, so you're either gonna have to click on it or click off of it to see the rest of the web page? And I understand you don't want a volume coming on to disrupt a board meeting, church, whatever. If somebody were to ask me in here, well, what day is graduation? If I went to West Stokes' website and it starts playing, that's a disruption. But I could reach down and click off of it, but I'm just trying to think, that on the side of it like that, I may not see it, but if it covered up like 1/4, and I know that's a big board, I probably would see it on my phone, but if you took up like a, okay.
This cannot happen on mobile. It's not capable, the way the site's based, it's not able to be done. He said that I could get a border around it to make it stand out more, because it does kind of sink into.
There are some pictures behind it, it blends into.
Well, hit play. Just hit play.
Hit play.
Hit play.
No, that's fine. If that is rolling, whether it's small or big, I think somebody's going to pay attention to it because it's a contrasting, me personally. I mean, you see it right there behind you.
Yeah. Like if it were like this big right in the middle, where either you would have to click off of it, well, that's not touching.
Yeah, right.
Right, you could either turn it off or,
But if we put
That,
it,
that would be more, a little bit more visible in the middle if it was,
Yeah, and, right. Amanda, could you get it over like between the girl's picture and where it says sparking new possibilities?
but does that drown out the Spark New? I mean, we're already covering it up. Spark New, we don't know.
Like you said, if they go into the sites, the video immediately pops up. But if they click off of it, the video goes.
so how do you remove that video? Just, you can't click it off?
One of the suggestions was that the video stay minimized in the video player in the corner the entire time during the site. See how it always stays there.
Right. But I don't have the option to turn that off. I just, yeah, okay. But but again, it's not taking up half my screen on my phone, because that's not optional, it would only be on the desktop.
All right, but if, where we've got it now, when the format of most of our web pages, all the language and verbiage and text is on the right. So maybe we need to move that to the left.
I tried to get him to have that done for us before the meeting tonight, but he couldn't get it done.
That's fine.
We were gonna move it middle.
Well, and
I'm just saying bottom left may be better so that we don't cover anybody's picture.
And if you, and I was thinking middle to make it visible, but if you can't get rid of it, no, I don't want to cover up a fourth of our screen. I would take that back.
Yeah, the bottom left-hand corner, and if that thing's actually set there.
You know, there are
and
times,
automatically
if I go to
pop
a
it up,
website, you know,
right.
there's that pop-up that will jump up, like we do with weather delays. There's sometimes some videos that pop up, or a commercial or whatever, and I can go click it off, and then I got my website.
You had to, it kept play through, and then it stopped.
Right.
If you're cashing and you're not proving your cookies, if you go back in multiple times, that video will pop up over and over and over again.
Cash for cookies?
If that's an option, if it is, we can give it a try. I mean, I can have another demo site for the next meeting, so you can see it in different places.
I think if you can get rid of it, a kind of middle block would be great. If you can't, I agree. I think the left-hand side probably has the least amount of text on
I
it.
think the bottom left's gonna be better either way, because if we put it in the middle now, it's automatically gonna start, if you put it in the middle, it's already covering up part of sparking possibilities.
Right. Well, I was
Can-
just thinking if you could click it off.
Yeah,
but
can
if
we
you
go to
click it
another
off, no.
school's website real fast? Can we go to one of the other high schools, pick one? See, all of the verbiage is on the right.
Some, now, I have got photos that the verbiage is over here, because this is just the luck of the draw, how it looks right now. See,
But can we request it to be all on one side? Is that something we could work with them for? If we're gonna put a player, to always put the verbiage on the right.
What difference does that make?
Okay,
What difference? What really
I'll just make it smaller and make it blend.
right.
If you want verbiage on,
Well, here's the question, and maybe it's crazy, but we've got to put the player on every website anyway, right? So if the verbiage is on the left, put the player on the right. If the
Right.
verbiage is on the right, put the player on the left. Just put the player where the verbiage isn't, and we're good. It'll be some individuality, but we're already having to individualize the websites anyway.
I can request that not only do I have access to control what video plays on the site, but where it is at. Right now, it's locked, I can't move it, but this is just for demo purposes.
Yeah, that's fine. We have total confidence in you and the team.
Now, Board, also, what I mentioned to you as a proposal, and this is from feedback from our team, would you be opposed to starting out if we created one middle school video that's usable at all three, and then one elementary that's usable at all elementary schools, again, to focus this year on our marketing foundation, our branding, verbiage, and things that we want told over and over again and that are out there now on these digital ad buy campaigns, which is some of your messaging, just so you can help begin to remember this with us, Every child in our county deserves our focus and our investment. Every student is known, valued, and cared for. We create bonds with our students, fostering a safe, open, and engagement learning environment. Stokes County, a wonderful place to live and an inspiring place to learn. So these kinds of things, they can also copy and paste to all of this social media, the web pages, that type thing.
And all those pictures that you see on the websites, it's got the words on them, they can use that for the website.
Yeah, let's stay on the website for a while.
Okay, so see how all the pictures have the words on them with the brand messaging? Those are all available to media coordinators, principals right now to be in use. I'm trying to take the photos that are raw photos, edit them where they can be on social media or the website with the branding messaging so that it's already all they have to do is just grab it and post it. So they have a large bank to choose from. I'm trying to make like 5 a week, so they've got a pretty good size right now.
Mr. Treasurer, can you pull up Pine Hall? I'm trying to remember which one's got the video. No, I think Pine Hall has the,
Pine Hall.
the Dr. Rice endorsed and made him famous video. Down at the bottom. And I'm fine with that one for the elementary, if it's that one. Because that tells something about Stokes County, and it's already a shot video. It's 2 minutes long if you don't want to see it. But
It's fine. I think
me
I'll just
personally, I'm thinking somebody going that doesn't know about the schools going to an elementary school's website, they're trying to figure out Stokes County, do I want to live there or not? And then they can go through and pick different things. But as a generic, just to get us launched until we can get some specifics.
We did create that.
And Mr. Rogers, we might even want to put that type video on our main webpage for Stokes County Schools, so it lets them understand a little bit about living in Stokes County, what it looks like, what all is in our county, as just an appealing overview.
Hey, I'm a flashy, feel-good type of guy. I mean, I'd rather see a video launch and have to close it than a static website. But I'm just one board member, I mean.
What kind of timeline are we looking at to have all the schools on it after we do the 3 generics?
We would be able to get that up after August 31. Karen, what is Mr. Munden's thought process on the time to roll that out with helping schools, he and Brooke Johnson?
Well, he wanted to go ahead with Chestnut Grove to see the time process and how long it would take, engage it from that, and then give us an idea of how long it would take for each school. So after the training, he told me he would give me a date after he got there and made that one, and we would go from there, and he would establish training dates with me.
I think the issue we ran into was there's only one high school CTE class that teaches the videography. So it's a West Stokes baby.
Right.
And Chestnut Grove's right there in his back door, so there's, can be some collaboration that logistically may not work for others
Right.
out of the gate.
Well, that's where we wanted to add Brooke Johnson, our new ITO, to utilize her. She's gonna serve all schools, so he's willing to train her, and they've been working together with the oculus sets at Southeastern Piney Grove this summer, so they've already been working together, and he said he would be willing to train her and help her, so she would be serving all schools, so that would be an additional tool we could use.
That would be
So in
good.
terms of time frame, you think within the first quarter, or for the elementary, probably middle school pretty quickly?
November-ish probably for middle, and then
Did you say, and Ms. Barker, so the webmasters probably makes sense that, is it the media coordinators that are the webmasters because they do all the IT and technology, so the principals, I guess, understand that too.
But
probably.
during our meeting, they didn't say it was strictly,
Our webmasters are strictly the media coordinators.
but the social media,
Yeah,
the people getting the stipend may or may not be the,
right. But it is, mostly they're all media coordinators, the webmaster. Yes, I think that's right.
From the list that's come in thus far, we looked at earlier today, it's the same person,
Yeah.
the media coordinator.
And so who would be training these people? Mr. Muston?
Yes, Mr. Munden at West
Munden,
Stokes
I'm
High
sorry.
School. No, that's
Yeah.
fine. Mr. Forrest Munden, yes.
Munden, okay, well, that's good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Jessup. It looks like you're working very hard on this and making progress, so just keep us up to date, keep us informed, and whatever we can do to help, let us know.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
Board.
ma'am. Thank you.
We appreciate all y'all's hard work on this.
That brings us to discussion item I, discussion of spring policy updates, policy 3430, 6220, 7620, and 8320. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in the last memorandum, I indicated my approval of these policies, except requesting also the review by Mr. Rose, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Moore. We now have that completed. Mr. Rose has agreed that policy 3430 is an improvement and recommends that we adopt that with the changes as recommended by the School Boards Association. You received a memorandum from me with the required modification of 6220 in order to meet Department of Agriculture regulations. And we have the modification of 8320 requested by Mrs. Moore. There is no modification for 7620. That one will stay. So we're now in a position to recommend the adoption of all of the policies as indicated.
B, 6220B, what School Board Association recommended, there are lines there
Right.
for amounts. But our current policy doesn't allow for that. Do we use what we have current there?
Well, for final action, we'll probably take final action at the next meeting.
Okay.
And we'll have those completed at the next meeting.
Okay.
I had some, if I may,
Ms.
Mr.
Knight.
Chairman. I had some concerns with policy 5240, advertising in the schools. When would something like that take place? What do you mean, what is it referring to with advertising?
5240?
Yes,
Is it in the book?
that was in our last packet, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The summarized notes, you know. Advertising in the school.
Okay,
Can you pull up the original policy file, Dr. Rice?
I can't. Can you pull up policy 5240 from our website, policy manual? Website. So is there, what is the specific question? I'm looking at the policy now.
If we had, I mean, I think it's a recommendation, like, we don't have to expand on the terms of gender in section B. And it says recommended, combines numbers 1 and 2 in section D. Moves the old section D to section E, recommended, fixes the reference policy of 4720, clarifies the language, and section E clarifies the language throughout the rest of the policy. It says, recommended, and then removes an unnecessary footnote for information only. You know, my question was, again, it's just recommended, can we leave our old policy in place there?
Sure.
And then I was just wanting to also see a copy of the current standing 5240.
I think it'd be helpful if we could, if it could be brought up to see so people can understand what the problem is
Right.
in the policy. Well, it's down on, advertising in the schools, see if you can,
Expands in section B, advertising, promotional messages, other items and materials, vulgar, indecent, or obscene, contain person's character, race, religion, gender, family, just reading.
is this the new policy here?
This is our current policy.
Okay. Well, in the one that we were passed out in the spring, it's a lot different.
So personally, as one board member, I would recommend that we keep that policy and not make the changes. Again, I'm only one person.
Do we know what changed between this and the?
Yes, it's in our last. It, expands on the term gender in section B to list sex, including pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity. That's a recommendation to make those changes. Combines number 1 and 2 in section D that he had up on the screen there. Recommended moves, again, it's all just references to that policy. It's 5240 is the policy. Letter, I'm not sure, I'm sorry. I can, E, yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
So that was the old policy, Mr. Johnson.
The new policy adds, if I understand the question correctly, the new policy adds the parenthetical after the word sex, including pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity.
So the new policy adds that, is that correct?
Here is what come from state board with the strike throughs.
Correct. Yeah.
Personally, I'm fine not expanding into all that and leaving the policy as is if it still complies with current regulations or laws, especially in regards to advertising in the schools. To me, less is better, and again.
The legal effect of it is basically the same. I don't,
Rather than spelling it out, okay. I'm fine not spelling it out nor opening the door for additional advertising, as it states, of these things. So,
Okay,
Well,
I concur
I
with Ms.
agree.
Knight.
yeah.
I
We're gonna
agree
bring
with
this back at the next meeting, is that correct? So maybe,
We'll bring the strike-throughs for this back so that we can lay them side by side and compare.
okay.
yeah, the 5240 we may wanna keep as current
Yeah,
instead of changing to the new policy,
yeah, I agree with not changing.
okay?
Good call there.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Johnson on policy? We'll take this back up at our next meeting and hopefully get approval to next meeting, is that correct, Mr. Johnson?
that is correct.
Okay, so if we have any other concerns about that, feel free to email Mr. Johnson between now and next meeting, and he can come prepared for that at the next meeting. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
That takes us to our discussion item J, a discussion of 22-23 budget, current expense. And we've had conversations I'll just kind of maybe give us something to start with here on our budget. I've had conversations with most, I think with all the other board members privately, one-on-one, and trying to decide here what I was trying to do is get a consensus of maybe what we all agree on, and then we can, and it kind of give us a good starting point for here tonight. So just a little history. As we all know, when we went up for our budget meeting with the county commissioners, then they sent us they approved our budget. We were $1,202,951 short, underfunded from what we had requested. Okay, out of that $1,202,951, we had $605,906 of that was new request. That was 9 items that we had requested that were new in addition to what we had last year. Okay, so if we cut out the new request that we had from last year that we requested that we wanted to add on top of last year, that left us a total of $597,045 that we were still short, just to be whole from last year to continue the same budget we had last year, still provide the same services, and just maintain like we operated in this past budget year. Now, is that correct, Dr. Rice? Does that sound
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm kind of getting us right on our numbers. So what I've got here is a list of some possible cuts and some possible transfer of funds from one budget to another budget, one bucket to another bucket, if that's Ms. Moore, if that's the way I think Ms. Moore would put it too. So I'm going to go through that list and see if we all do agree kind of on these items, and then we can see if we have any more cuts or changes that we want to make to it. Okay, I'm just trying to get us a good starting spot here. So if we start out needing to cut or make up $597,045, we can transfer our tutoring to ESSER funds. That's a total of $64,590. We can transfer technology to the state budget. That's technology that's paid out of local funds. Is that correct, Ms. Moore? We can transfer the technology to the state funds. That's $88,721. We can cut, or we had in our budget a board salary increase for a total of $6,459 that can be cut. We can cut our coaching supplement as a 5% increase for a total of $17,131.
Mr. Robertson, could I pause real quickly?
Yes, sir.
In case people are watching live, I don't want people to panic. You're not suggesting cutting the coaching supplement. We had proposed an increase to the supplement, and you're proposing to leave it the same. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand thinking we are cutting the coaching supplement.
That's correct. It's just
We're cutting the proposed increase.
Right. So the coaching supplement increase that we had proposed of $17,131, the principal supplement increase of $20,040, the assistant principal increase of $10,547, and we have at this time we have instructional coaches. We have 7 positions of instructional coaches, and we're proposing cutting 2 instructional coach positions for a total of $146,748. So if I add up all the transfers of ESSER funds, technology, the cuts or proposed increases, it totals up to be a deficit still of $242,809. So we're still going to be $242,809 short in our budget. We still have to make up. Now we have we can go through our cuts, possible cuts, and come up with some more cuts and movements, maybe to ESSER funds if we'd like, or we have an option of paying the 242,809 from our fund balance. We do have a fund balance. Ms. Moore, can you tell us about what we have in our fund balance? So about 2 million in our fund balance. Okay, so if we have close to 2 million in our fund balance, we can transfer over $242,809, and there are also other possible cuts that we could make. So that hopefully would be a good maybe starting point. I think everybody is about in agreement with those items listed, and so we'll open that up for discussion now. Mr. Rogers, you have items that you like to discuss?
Yeah.
Additions or subtractions?
Yeah, well, just really two, the 12-month maintenance, having trouble saying this, the 12-month maintenance position, that was 56,122. I still think it is in our best interest to go into fund balance and fund it for the first 6 months, because you have a retirement in March, correct? So if not, we're going to be down a position come March that, basically we're pre-hiring, backfilling that position. I think that's money well spent to get them up to speed, because it's, unless I have lost my mind, it's a boiler technician, and we would need at least 6 months to get them up to speed. And even though it's 95 degrees today, when we fire the boilers up, that's going to be some great OJT, correct? So, I mean, that's mine. I'm all for funding half of that one if we have to tap into fund balance, because that position is going to come back in. The new hire will not be making as much as what we have now, correct? So it's going to about wash out over a 2-year span. So that's about a net zero. And then, personally, I don't think coming off of COVID, teacher coaches should be reduced. I think they should be held extremely accountable for next year, though, because I've seen the test scores. And I've got some questions about those. So understanding that if it doesn't change next year, 2's not going to be the number. It's going to be more like all, or close to it, because we want what we pay for. But that's my personal opinion. So those are the only two modifications. And if we have to tap ESSER funds for learning loss to pick up the 2 teacher coaches for now, I believe we could. But could we not, Ms. Moore, if we had to? Because right now we're playing at like 360 in ESSER, tapping into it, so, and it expires in 2024 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be another 120,000 out of ESSER, bringing it to roughly 220 left. That's me.
So your two proposals is to add half of the 6-month maintenance position?
Yeah, because it's about a 2-year washout, probably. It should pay for itself, because you're only a half a position for you're at that position for 6 months, and then the position that they were taking over, they will have already filled it. So you're only funding 6 months of their salary, and it's going to be at a lower rate than when the person that retires in March leaves.
So if he retires in March, it's going to actually be more than 6 months, right?
Depending on when the actual hire takes place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you advertise for a couple of weeks, interview for a couple of weeks, they would be hired until maybe mid-September. And then, so from then September to March would be closer to that 6 months. It's not like, if you approve it today, they start tomorrow. We've not posted, don't have a candidate.
Yeah.
A good month.
And Mr. Goins, I think I don't know if it was last year or maybe 2 years ago, we had hired an extra maintenance position to learn the locksmith position. Is that true? But the locksmith that has been with us for a while has still not retired? Okay, is there any word on that?
And there's not paperwork on the boiler mechanic either, correct? This is just a conversation. The person's not filed for retirement yet, correct?
Has he made an educated guess that he's going? Verbally to you?
But the locksmith backed away.
Yes, ma'am.
The locksmith backed away from that and still with you. But he didn't.
You know, when you say March, a lot of people retire, when you say March, it's March 1st, not March 30th, you know? Because they got that 20-day month in February.
I'll stick with it, but you either.
So the six-month maintenance position would add 28,061.
Roughly. I mean, again, that's an estimate based on experience.
28,061.
Okay.
That cut gets us to 577,845.
What, how much?
577,845 instead of 605. Because you gotta add that 28 back.
Okay, so were those, if we take the deficit that we had of 242,809, and we add back in the teacher coach positions of 146,748, and a 6-month maintenance position, then we're now at 417,618.
Well, I'm saying put the 2 instructional coaches on to ESSER.
And the ESSER funds?
Yeah, transfer
Okay.
them to ESSER.
So we
Is
can
that
take
possible, Ms. Jessup? I mean,
Moore?
Ms. Moore? So those would be extended for, what, 2 more years? Okay.
So then that would put us at 270,870. Would be our total, to come out of fund balance would be 270,870, if we stand at that currently. Okay, and then that would drop our remaining ESSER funds. Ms. Moore, what did you say a while ago? We had about 800,000?
820.
It's gonna put somewhere around 220.
We
And
got
then,
820 in ESSER funds, it's going to, and drop 145 off of it, so
We're about 680.
680.
Yeah, 675.
we're 820 plus there was several positions that was transferred over with the proposal that you read out.
Well, the tutoring transferred over to ESSER funds would be another 65,000 almost.
Yeah, and there was also, I think, custodians.
No,
Well,
that
we
wasn't
haven't done
included.
anything with the custodians.
That was local technology.
Yeah, technology to the state. I would be in favor of leaving our custodians as is. I don't,
current.
in current,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
see that that's a good,
Okay.
use of ESSER funds to me.
So on this, just strike this off the red.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Knight, you have,
I mean, guess I'm okay with either suggestion, although I do, you know, what Mr. Robertson mentioned as well as what Mr. Rogers mentioned.
you know, I do understand we're kind of on the bare bones with teachers, coaches, but, you know, I can also think of other things like additional teachers or teacher assistants or other ways to help, you know, in the classroom as well that I'm sure in regards to learning loss would be super helpful. But anyway, tough decisions. But I'm okay leaving, like you said, the custodial positions and not transferring them to ESSER. And I agree with that boiler position, that's a super expensive, you know, upkeep to us in capital if we don't have someone that can work on it. The tutoring funds, I understand that definitely would qualify under ESSER. I just know that we had really worked to up those funds, so I wouldn't want to see it phase out over time if the money's not there, you know, in 2024. But I understand if we need to maybe transfer it. So I pretty much agree with the other recommendations to forego some of the, I guess, increases for now, unfortunately.
So you're leaning on teaching coaches.
Guess I'm undecided.
I'm sorry,
I said, I guess I'm undecided.
on what?
A little bit undecided.
On,
The teacher coaches. I would like to hear others' input.
as far as cutting them or transferring them over?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Messick, input?
Well, first of all, I want to kind of understand about the maintenance. What was the recommendation about the custodians, the transfer?
COVID, this ESSER funds and COVID money has to be used for COVID-related expenses.
Right.
When this first came through, there unknowingly didn't know all the audit requirements that we would have. We were limited in some of the things contractually we could purchase, and we made the decision, again, if you remember, y'all had given me emergency authority during these times. Our fund balance was extremely low as well, and we did some fund transfers to put some custodians on ESSER funds, which is an allowable expense.
Right.
That allowed us not to use local funds to pay for those custodians at that time, for that year. That allowed us to get the fund balance that we are, where there's not the restrictions on the money. We could spend fund balance however we wanted to, but ESSER funds had to be spent for ESSER-related expenses, and there was no supplanting rules with ESSER, so that was a 100% allowable expense. When we got the budget that we got back, again, we were down. The commissioners funded about $800,000 extra over their initial recommendation, correct? And so when we were looking at, okay, so how do we come up with the $597,045? When I work with our team, we always try to keep cuts away from kids as much as possible. At the same time, we want the tools in place to try to be successful and educate our kids. And so when we looked at it, we tried to figure out how we could, and again, during this time, we're in an extremely volatile economy. You know, gas, according to the news this morning, dropped 50 cents in the last couple of weeks. But it's still $1.20 over where it was a year ago at this point. Where is it going to be in December? Nobody knows. There's predictions it could be back up higher again, but nobody predicted this last 55-cent drop this week. Other things that go on with prices, it's just very volatile right now. So we tried to come up with a recommendation to try to maintain what we have as we get through this volatility. We also know that we've got a population study that's complete. We're having a facility studies come through, and that the board, in conjunction with the county commissioners, when we talk about funding, will have to come up with some recommendations soon about, are we going to maintain 19 facilities, or are we not? not knowing where all of that was going right now, our recommendation was to transfer those custodial positions so that we could not use the fund balance, but use ESSER funds for that right now to get us through this year. We would still have some more in ESSERs to get us through another year if we needed to. Until we make decisions of either we're going to stay the way we are or we're going to become more efficient, and we may not need all the positions then. Because, again, right now out of local, just for an example, we have 19 front desk people. Well, if we were to go down to 16 schools, or we were to go down to 15 schools, you wouldn't need all of those. There would be extra money then to pay teacher, coaches, or other things. So instead of cutting them now and then in 2 years realizing, okay, we could hire some back, instead of going through, again, getting rid of people, then rehiring people, we were looking at a way to try to maintain what we had without affecting all that until we made some of these other decisions as well. But transferring custodians to ESSERs is an allowable expense. We've done it before. It allowed us to get the fund balance we have today. And so that was just a strategy that was in our recommendation to the board to use that strategy here during this budget.
Well, and we have the ESSER funds through 2024, is that correct?
Correct.
So we could extend our fund balance by transferring them, and they would still have their jobs to 2024. And then, after that, pick them up in our fund balance, correct?
Or depending on what the budget is then, the commissioners may provide more money, or they may cut more money. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years.
Right.
But we know we have the safety net now.
Right, and then we all know we have to have custodians anyway.
Absolutely.
So they're gonna have to be hired one way or the other. So my recommendation is what your recommendation was, Dr. Rice, is to just leave them with the ESSER funds, because, you know, that way it gives us more money in the fund balance. So I think that might be the best thing there. That's my opinion, to use them with using the ESSER funds for 2 years. Okay, one thing, so if we do that, we have to still now subtract from the ESSER funds that we just subtracted before, right? Will there still be any money left?
Yes, ma'am.
How much would be left? How much? 362.
Turning it off to
Yeah,
362,000, yes.
So how much would that
That would
leave?
be just those categories, and then if you do the teacher coaches, that's another 146, that's 13.
We'd end up with about 247, 679.09 is what I come up with as far as ESSER funds remaining.
247 what?
679.09.
A little bit over 200 and some $1,000, you're right.
Right. So that would be all the ESSER funds that our schools would have, or is there another pocket of ESSER funds?
That would be what's left unbudgeted that we would yet to decide, or if any changes happen to some of the categories we've approved and had to amend them, for example.
So that would leave us with that amount. But we still we'd have a little bit more money in our fund balance. Still 2 million or probably.
Should.
Yes.
Yes.
I think at that point, we wouldn't have to take any money out of the fund balance. It would all, would be fine. But to understand too, the custodian positions, they're going to be funded whether they're out of the general fund, out of the local fund, or the ESSER funds. If we don't transfer them to the ESSER fund, doesn't mean that they're going to get cut.
No, I don't want them cut.
Right.
That's not my
I just wanted to
point.
clarify that they'll be there either way.
Right. Oh, you're trying to clarify it for other people. No, no one's trying to cut 7.5 custodians.
Right.
Not at all. What I'm saying is their money would just be coming from a different fund source.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what we did the first year of ESSER. We moved their money, and then at the end of the year, we moved them back to local.
Right. So that's
To a
something
custodian,
we
it
do
makes no
back and
difference.
forth.
They got their paychecks every month.
right.
We never intended to cut anybody.
Right.
We just changed the funding source for a year.
And sometimes you have to, I've seen over the years, being on the board almost 10 years now, that you have to change the fund source sometimes, keep people's jobs, to,
We
you know,
almost
add
do that monthly. This board
people.
does.
And so it's not anything unusual. So that's why I think that that's okay. Also, about the teacher coaches, I know it would draw that ESSER fund down, but I really feel like that if we can, and I didn't realize that you could use ESSER funds for the 2 teacher coaches. So I would be for keeping the 2 extra teacher coaches, like Mr. Rogers had mentioned, and just use the ESSER funds, which I know is drawing down ESSER funds, but would give the teacher coaches, 2 more years. And I don't, I looked at, I've looked at some of the scores or whatever, and honestly, I think we need those. I think that if we could get the principals behind the teacher coaches and they would support them, that the thing that's the problem is they have too many schools. And so you need to have someone in there looking at the scores. I don't think that everybody has time to do that. And certainly it would be put back on the principal, to monitor those scores, to see which children are behind and what is the best plan, learning plan for them. So I think that's part of the teacher coach job. And also the new curriculums that come out with DPI. They're the ones that present it to the teachers, and they do some staff development. Is that right? They do some staff development. So if you cut them, then what you're doing is you're just making the ones that are left have more schools. And the more schools you have, the less effective you are. And anybody here, sitting here, can know the more hats you wear and the more duties you've got, the less time you can spend on the ones that you really need to concentrate on. Here's the other thing. I think, and I was not for this years ago, and so I think even though not every single person takes the dental insurance, some people are lucky enough they can be on their husbands or their wives. But since out of about 850 employees, we have about 660 that take the dental, that I think we need to add back in the dental matching increase. Because years ago, we took some of the dental away from our employees, because of the fund balance and everything. So I just feel like that's fair for anybody that signed up for dental. They could have at the open enrollment, or they could next year, but I feel like we need to strengthen that to help as many employees as we can. And that's just, to me, that's not that much, $30,000. So that's my recommendation, to add in the dental matching increase, and that would have to come out of our fund balance. So that's my recommendation. Anybody else want to?
Well,
think that might be okay.
if we do transfer those custodian positions over, we may have enough in the local budget to add that dental. Is that correct?
Well, that's what I just said, come out of the fund balance.
Yeah, well, not necessarily the fund balance. Well, maybe the fund balance, but
In the fund
Out
balance,
of
the
our
same
local
thing as
budget.
out of
local
our
budget.
local budget.
It's the same thing, I think.
Our local budget is spent, and what we can't meet expenses comes out of fund balance. But with moving these other things around, we probably would be able to maintain our fund balance and pay for the $33,000. If with these other
And
transfers, we do
that's
that.
a lot of people, in our system. And so it's something that would, it might not help a lot, but it would help a little bit.
Mr. Robertson, can I ask one question of Mr. Rose that may shed some light on this funding?
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked Saturday. I don't want the program to go away. We don't need the program to go away, but we can't have somebody teach it. That's a teaching position. Have you been able to find anybody for a fire instructor?
Mr. Rose, could you speak into your microphone, please?
He's got too many monitors in the way.
We have, I've not had a single applicant. I've reached out to fire departments, I've reached out to the Office of the State Fire Marshal, and they're not there.
The reason I asked the question is if we can't get anybody by, and Mr. Rose and I talked Saturday about this because he knows I'm passionate about the program. If we can't find anybody by our next meeting in August, we're going to have to basically put the program on hold, which would free up one teaching position, or if a teacher coach is 146, call it 73,324, or 374, excuse me. That would be back unassigned and come back into the operational current expense budget.
Dr. Rice, you want to address that we spoke about earlier?
Well, and that was a line item from the county commissioner. Although they can't do a line item with our budget, they were funding that. So I don't know how they would feel, but I would say, kind of like we were talking about the maintenance position, it would be a half a year savings and then possibly a half a year savings, because I would want to relook or continue to look. But again, I agree with you. By the August 8th deadline, we need to run schedules for the high school. We need to pull the plug on that, move people to different courses so that we can run our schedules. We could continue to look for somebody for second semester. We may only have to pay a half a salary that year. That'd be a half a year savings. If we couldn't still find somebody then it would be a whole year savings. But again, the commissioners last year, when they fully funded our budget, that was part of that budget, was that item. But they can't line item our budget. So we would just need to talk through that.
And when we submitted this budget, we're trying to settle on, that was like a teaching position. So that line item just moved up to your teaching positions, and it's not itemized as that
Because they
particular.
technically can't.
Right, so when they look, you don't see that line item separate, it's
Right.
part of your teaching, 12
But
and a half position.
we would, again, if he can't find somebody and he has two leads left, if we can't find somebody to recommend at the next meeting, we would at least have a half a year savings. And then if we still can't find somebody by, I'd say, probably the December 1st meeting at the latest, we would have a year savings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want it to go away.
Right. And we
They
don't need-
funded
that's
it
why
at
I'm saying it that way.
$75,000 last year.
I want to be very clear that we're not saying we're cutting that position.
Right.
Because we want the program, it's been a good program, it's been successful, we want to keep trying to hire it.
Right.
But it would be a half a year savings if we can't find somebody in the next 2 weeks.
Mr. Rose, is the problem the salary, not getting someone for the fire academy? What is the problem or the holdup or the reason people leave is because of the salary or?
Yes, the candidate that we had, they increased the supplements in Winston-Salem for the actual firefighters. And he went back to being a firefighter in Rural Hall. So that is a big part of the problem. And then, you know, the typical folks who sign up to be firefighters aren't necessarily considering teaching as a field. It's a good thing for when you retire. But, you know, for some of them, there's also an income cap on that as well. We're not
how
alone
much
having
they
a
can-
hard time finding that position in particular.
When I had a meeting with Forsyth Tech back several months ago, and they were talking about that with several of their positions, just like we're facing with the fire academy. I mean, to teach diesel mechanics. Well, it's hard to get somebody
They wouldn't go.
that's making $150,000 a year to come teach for 60.
Can't do that.
So they were saying the same thing. They would like to grow their programs, but they're having a hard time finding instructors in the CTE world because we're training kids for these high-paying jobs, but they're not going to leave the high-paying job to come to teach. And so it becomes problematic.
It's hard to sell them on going back to school to add the 18 credit hours to be a lateral entry for a pay cut.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bryant?
Well, I agree with Mike on the half-year maintenance position. You know, I've been, Von's been on the other end of the phone with me several times over that maintenance position. To me, that's a definite gotta have, because, we've got 26 boilers. At least 13 of them not gonna start up and run right. You can figure about 50% of them not gonna start up and run right come October, November. If we have to call somebody to come look at them, work on them, like Lewis Boiler or some business like that, we're gonna be spending several times that salary right there to get them fixed, when we could do it in-house. This job will pay for itself. The other thing, I agree with Pat on the dental insurance increase. To leave that there to help match up, I think our employees deserve it. The third thing is, I'll agree with Mike on this. At first, I was wanting to go ahead and just cut the 2 positions altogether, but if we move the 2 teacher coaches to the ESSER funds and have stipulations of performance, I mean, I want to see something on the scores. After I saw the scores this year, and I'm looking, are we getting our money's worth? I want to see some kind of stipulations, like Mike said, or
It would be
in
input,
2 years.
input from teachers.
Yeah,
It would be
because the input
from
I've got out of teachers hasn't been good.
Right.
I spent an hour and a half this past week on the phone with 2 different teachers. And they said that their principal looked at the PLCs maybe 3 times in a year, because teacher coaches was doing his job instead of helping them. I just want to make sure that some of that's not going on. And the custodians, I even sat here and just looked, if we moved half of them, if we moved 4 of them to ESSER funds and left the other 3.5 out, that'd be a $200,000 savings. So as long as we're not going to ever cut those jobs are going to be there no matter what. I don't mind moving them to ESSER funds to save the money. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Y'all making it hard on me trying to keep up with all these numbers.
Can I say something about teacher coaches real quick?
Absolutely.
Last week, we did look at data with our principals, and our teacher coaches were sitting there. None of them are 11-month employees. None of them are 12-month employees. They knew that that opportunity was there. They wanted the first-hand look. They didn't want to wait 2 months. They wanted to start planning with their principals immediately. They're a hard-working group. With that said, and I know what is said here today, and I get we are in a quantifying world. It is extremely hard to quantify any one person. And I'm not trying to make this personal, but I'm sure there are people in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools that don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so there are people that would say, well, I don't know why we pay Dwayne Bryant. I've never seen him. Mm-hmm. I don't know the impact of that. But then there are other people that you get their air conditioning going, they'll throw rose petals at your feet because you got their air conditioning on. A teacher coach may not spend so much time with one individual person because they don't have the need. So that person may not see the need of a teacher coach as much as another person who they're partnered with for coaching. They don't necessarily work with 600. They do work with everybody, but may not spend the same amount of intensive time with any one person. At the same time, yes, our scores are not where they want to be. And again, Michael, I'm trying not to say anything so he'll throw anything at me. They're not where we need to be. They're not back to COVID numbers, overall, they took a nice jump from COVID, where we were told originally by all experts it would take 3 to 4 years to get back to where we were. And we're not back to where we were, but we've got a nice, we're moving in that direction. The previous year, we also had 37 tested categories, and 35 out of the 37, we showed a year or more's worth of growth. So we're doing our jobs. In our marketing, you're going to get a good education in Stokes County. Are there a lot of metrics? Sure there are. Test scores are one of them, EOGs, EOCs. There's also iReady data. There's also the number of kids that have pathways to be promoted, and our numbers are extremely good in those areas. But again, when you look at our last growth data, which is the true measure, again, trying to use a simple example, we could start a program with any of our PE teachers today to say, well, we're going to get the Board of Education to dunk a basketball. Okay? The chances of many of you dunking it is probably pretty slim. Some of you are taller than others, but the chances are pretty slim. And I'd throw myself in that too. I'm not going to get up like I did.
Everybody can dunk it, just depends on
Depend on the height of the goal.
That's right.
That's right. That's the accommodations piece. But could you all improve with the exercise routine from somebody? Yes. Well, school is where you came to us and then where you left us with. And again, in 35 out of 37 categories, we either made a year's worth of growth or we exceeded growth. And I can't remember which one's which. One was 15, one was 17. Did we exceed in 17, but get it in 15? Or did we get it in 15 and exceed it in 17? I can't remember. But it was neck and neck. They were basically the same. So other superintendents call me and say, what are y'all doing? How did y'all get that growth during COVID? We've had other schools come visit our schools to see our PLCs, to see what the teacher coaches do, because they want to see the growth that our kids have and our teachers have. So while our proficiency is not where any of us want it to be, and we are working on that, and we will constantly work on that to improve that, we also are proud of our growth. We're proud of what we do. And I don't know that we could have done that if you would take away 7 teacher coaches for the last couple of years. I don't know where that would be where we are today. And so can I quantify that versus a teacher that we hired or somebody that retired? Or, there's so many moving parts. It's very hard to get where we want to be. But we have successful growth, and we have for several years in a row. Again, when we find a pocket that it's not, we jump on it like a dog on a bone. And we work on that. And our professionals care. That's the thing. Last week when we met as a team, there were tears. There was anxiety. And then there was a renewed spirit of attacking the problem to make sure the kids get the quality education they need. I'm proud of our people. I'm proud of our teacher coaches for showing up when they don't have to in the summer because they care enough. That's their passion, and to make sure that our kids get what they want. And again, I'm not going to say every teacher in our district feels the same way about every one of them. So depending on who you talk to may be very different. At the same time, Mr. Roberts and I talked about a physician one time. He didn't really care for him, didn't care for his bedside manner or whatever. I think he's the greatest doctor I've ever had. You know what? We're both right. He didn't have a great experience. I did. I think a lot better of him than he did. The reality is he's a doctor who's licensed that does all of his stuff. So, but you have different experiences, and that's valid. And so I don't discount anything that somebody you might talk to a teacher or a principal or whoever about a teacher coach. They have the right to their experience as well. But we have a lot of data from our surveys that say that our teachers on the whole think they're very valuable and see the value of them in their teaching profession every day. So, and I get tough budget times, tough budget decisions, but I want to, I feel compelled that I need to speak out on their behalf that they work 12 months a year and paid 10 months. They're working on pacing guides right now. I talked to one this weekend who was talking about finishing up the social studies pacing guide. They've been working on it every week this summer and not getting paid a dime for it. And that's the passion that they have for the job. And so I would not be doing my job if I didn't let you know that side of it as well.
Now, with that said, because I was the one that made this statement, when I look at a class coming out of COVID in third grade, and I say their test scores, and then I look at that same class, because it's one grade level per that school, and in fourth grade, they've gone down. I've got to say, what's going on here? We score better coming during COVID than we do after COVID. So, and if there's a trend, and I correlate that between the same teacher coach is serving 2 schools, and that same trend is happening, that's when we're going to have this conversation. Do we need a teacher coach? Are they being effective, or do we need to change a teacher coach? Because this isn't a lifetime appointment.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be Attila the Hun here. I'm trying to be the guy that's taking care of the citizens of Stokes County, because it's their tax dollars paying for it. It's our kids that are benefiting or suffering from it. Nobody's doubting their work ethic.
No.
There's a lot of great doctors that have bad bedside manners. There's a lot that have malpractice suits because their bedside manner is bad and their medical practice is bad. That doesn't mean everybody's meant to be a doctor. Everybody's meant to be a teacher coach. But as an administration, understand that we as a board expect the deck to be shuffled until we get the proper hand.
Understood.
What they were telling me, they wasn't saying that the teacher coaches weren't doing their job. They just felt like they were doing too much of the principal's job, that they couldn't be as effective as they could be.
They are instructionally based. The principal has multiple roles, which instruction, discipline, management, all of that. The teacher coach is instructionally based. Are there times that when they have a PLC that may be the same time that a discipline incident happens, or a parent shows up unannounced and the principal goes to handle that because the teacher coach is competent to handle that? Sure, that does happen. But that teacher coach allows that instructional meeting to continue rather than be canceled because of that discipline issue or that parent issue or whatever it is. I don't believe any of our principals are blocking off those times to not go into those meetings, but school happens. And they allow school to the instructional piece of that planning to continue to happen because they're in the buildings.
And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse or anything, but also keep in mind, and I'm making a statement to administration with the board here, we approved the contract of 2 APs that are 50% instructional coaches. We expect them to be instructional coaches 50% of the time, because that's the model you said worked best. So if all of a sudden the teachers come to us and say, we never see our AP as the teacher coach because they're always doing the job as the AP, then that reflects negatively on that administration and our view as to whether we should fund that or not. It's nothing personal, it's business.
Understood?
I just want to say something about the scores. I agree with you. I looked at all off of them, and, but the thing is, in education, as opposed to any other profession, when you look at those scores, the teachers that teach these children, okay, those scores, you're relying on an 9-year-old that was 8 turning 9 in 3rd grade. You're looking at the 4th grade children, and they were 9 turning 10, so when they take that test, they're 10 years old. They're 9 years old, and then they're 10 years old, and then in 5th grade, they're 10 turning 11. So we're basing, you know, you can't base someone's career on a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, but a lot of times we look at that and we forget that they're children, and we want them to learn, and they do learn. But being a teacher for 40 years and being in the classroom, and being in those testing situations. You know, they're not like little robots that sit down and everybody grabs their pencil and goes to it and, you know, tries to do the best they can. And a lot of them do, probably the majority do. But I just want everybody to keep that in mind. And in the middle school, you know, they're like 12 and then 14, you know, 15, 16, something like that. And then in the high school, so we're, you know, you have to look at it as they are kids that are doing their best. They're learning, but, you know, they come from, you know, homes that some people prize education and some people, you know, they let their children just do whatever on homework, let them do the homework, and it's not checked. So, you know, just keep that in mind when you look at scores, that they're not all little robots sitting in their seat, and they're going to come out with great scores. You know, and I looked at the scores, and I don't think they were that bad. You know, we can all have improvement.
Absolutely,
but, yeah.
and we are working to improve them. I
Right.
promise you that.
But
Okay.
One last thing, and.
Yes, ma'am.
The board would probably agree if we had endless amounts of money, but I would suggest, you know, looking at what money we do have left that could be spent, like we say, on instruction or positions, and just consider the grade levels that COVID hit, say when they were in second grade, you know, that's a building block year, you know what I'm saying? And consider an extra hand in the classroom, especially at some of your elementary schools, just to go ahead and try to level out, because, you know, more help in the classroom equals more time that teacher spends with the student, and they're not doing this busy work that somebody else could be doing, but they don't have that help. And I have had some input from teachers that said, well, I don't have that help in the classroom, so that not TA, but that instructional coach did help with their paperwork with the PLCs and not burdening them down further. So, I mean, just something to look at. You might could do 2 TAs for the cost of, you know what I mean, one teaching position or instructional coach type position. I know we have 11 elementary schools, even half of that number, and, you know, share them amongst multiple grade levels. Any little bit, I think, would help. Just a thought to throw out there.
I think that may come into play if we have extra monies as we start going through the years. Is that correct, Ms. Moore?
We do. We usually add a couple of TAs throughout the year.
We do, and we're just waiting still. We thought we'd have our state allotments today, but I received an email right before the board meeting, they're not ready. So when we get that, for example, the teacher assistant allotment, if we look at it and there's extra there, then we get with Anna and Melissa and decide where it needs to go. So we do look at that all during the year, and like Dr. Rice said, a lot of times if we have been able to add during the year.
Okay.
Some of our kids that hurting the worst come through COVID were actually kindergartens and first graders. Is that not right, Miss McGee?
Right now,
Yeah,
some of them
right
stayed home
now.
or didn't do preschool, so they're
Yeah.
the ones
Well-
that started this year, last year.
Our kindergarten rocked it.
Yeah.
So kudos to our kindergarten, and, but our first grade did see a hit, so, in comparison to previous years. And one thing I wanted to say is thank you for this sincere conversation about instructional coaches, and I'm taking in everything everyone is saying, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Rose, but if there are situations that are brought to your attention that we need to know about, because we can't address it if we don't know about it. And we would be glad to have conversations, and serious conversations if need be, because we want the position to be as valued, just like you guys are saying. So we want to address anything, and I believe if we address things instead of it staying out there and not knowing about it, it makes it more effective, and to have those crucial conversations. So,
So if we were to be able to put some more teachers' aides into the classrooms at a later date, where would you think we would need them at the worst?
I'm sorry, ask that question again, I apologize.
If we were to be able to put some teachers' aides in later on, where would we need them the worst?
So usually,
What grade level and stuff?
so usually when we look at that, we look at where our data's at, where the supports may not be or may be at that time. For example, last year, Nancy Reynolds and Lawsonville both were cut one full position of a TA. So they only had one, and then they had a combination classroom in both of those places. And then continuing to enroll kindergartners at one of the locations. So we looked at all of that and determined, you know, they had paid for part of theirs were Title I, we paid to make it a full-time position. So we look at things like that, combination classrooms, data, where they are looking at what cuts we had to make. Can we give something back to a school where the King Elementary was one last year that a cut was made and we put one back. We try to get people also up to their ratio of what they're really supposed to have, or schools, excuse me, what they're supposed to have as well. So we try to look at all factors to try to support in as many places as we can. So, like you said, get your bang for your buck kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that just all depends on when Lynette is able to share that with us, and then Melissa and I have those conversations.
Because
Okay.
it's tough grades, like a kindergarten, first grade combo, which really we probably shouldn't have kindergarten, first grade combos if we can help it.
Combination classrooms are where we always look
So
first.
that was where, yeah, that was needed and much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, so, great discussion. I think we have great ideas. We're gonna run through the numbers again here just a second. I think the good thing is we do have options. I think, because of the leadership of Ms. Moore and Dr. Rice, especially on the budget items, we do have a good fund balance. We're very fortunate to have the amount of ESSER funds that we still have. So we do have options. I think that's a great thing, a great position that we can be in. I do hate to see our ESSER funds cut. You know, I hate to see, because we're not sure yet what we may need some of those ESSER funds for. I think, but at the same time, by using the ESSER funds, we keep our fund balance where it is, so we still have a safety net of the fund balance. So let me run through the numbers here, and let's just make sure that I've kind of got down what everybody was asking about or talking about or suggesting, and then we'll see if we can come to an agreement on some of this. So again, the number that we're looking at to start out with is $597,045. That's the amount of money that we're over, that we need to cut down and get back within budget. So out of that money, if we transfer to our ESSER funds, and our ESSER funds started out at $820,574.09. So if we transfer over to the ESSER funds, the tutoring, and Ms. Moore, you stop me now if I misspeak up here, something we're not allowed to do, okay? If we transfer over to the ESSER funds, our tutoring at $64,590. If we transfer over the custodian positions at $361,557, and if we transfer over to the ESSER funds, the two instructional coaches at $146,748. Okay, that leaves us a total in ESSER funds of $247,679.09. Okay.
Excuse me.
If we transfer over to the state budget, the technology, is that one position, Ms. Moore, or is it?
That is no position. That would be like software, some of the equipment, but it has to be direct instructional, but it's
Okay.
not a position.
Okay, so if we transfer over to the state, the technology, that is a total of $88,721. And then we listed 4 cuts. We've listed 4 cuts, the supplements and the salary increase, total of 10, 20 is 30, 47, about 50, maybe 54,000. If we cut about that 54,000, and then we add 2 additions back in, the 6-month maintenance position and the dental match, that Ms. Messick was talking about. The way I figure it, we've come out now to the good of about $60,687. So we have a surplus of about $60,687. And those numbers are open for review because I was trying to write them down here as we were going, and I may not be exactly right, but I think I'm pretty close. So if we stick to that, if we go to the transfer to the ESSER again, if we transfer ESSER tutoring, custodian, instructional coaches, the two instructional coaches, we transfer to the state the technology, we make the 4 cuts we talked about, and then we add the additions back in of the 6-month maintenance and the dental match. We're about $60,687 to the good. So I guess my question is, do we want to leave the cuts and have a surplus of $60,687, or do we want to add the cuts back in, and then we're going to be a surplus of probably $5,000, something like that? Does that sound about right? Do we have any opinions about that?
Just how concerned would Ms. Moore be about the custodial positions in the future? Or do you feel like there would be other buckets?
Well, we just have to keep in mind that as we work with our local budget, that might be coming back to local. One thing that we're hearing that might help even this ESSER funding is we feel like we might get some additional allotments for learning loss, and if so, that might free up some of this money, and then we might have some extra ESSER money there to use towards something else a little bit later on, since Mr. Robinson was talking about, he was a little bit concerned about the balance. But the main thing will be, we'll just need to remember that they'll have to eventually be moved back to local or state, yeah.
Yeah, I think my thought was, did somebody mention maybe just 2 of them? You know, not moving it all or something, all of the custodials.
I mean, if we don't move it all to ESSER funds, then we're going to take it out of the fund balance. So it's basically,
Fund balance doesn't have the restrictions applied if we need to use it elsewhere, where
that's
ESSER,
exactly right.
if we don't use it for ESSER-related items.
And then what does that
We
put
can't
the
use it for-
ESSER total at?
Our ESSER total would be at $247,679.09. So we still have a pretty good amount. I think my whole concern about this whole deal is, you know, our ESSER funds are running out here in another year or two.
2 years.
And then a lot of the items that we're transferring over to the ESSER funds are going to end up coming back over to the general fund,
Right.
our local fund.
Plus
And
just
so in a
maintaining
couple
the
years down the
technology
road.
piece.
I'm sorry?
Just maintaining the technology piece where we're putting like $1 million, that'll have to come back somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to bring it back over into the local budget at some point, within a couple years, whether it's instructional coaches, the tutoring, the custodian positions, or whatever. Those 3 things that we're transferring to ESSER total $572,895. Plus, there's some other things that would have to come back into local funding. So we're going to be probably transferring, you know, maybe close to $1 million back over to the local fund, and then within a couple years.
More than that.
Maybe more than that, as Ms. Moore says. So I think that's my concern. Yeah, it looks pretty good right now, but and we haven't really cut anything, and we don't want to cut anything. We don't want people to lose their jobs or cut. And I think this is a good way that we can work it where we can keep all of our positions. But I think we have to be mindful of what is going to happen a couple years down the road. And then what happens? You know, we do have a fund balance, but the fund balance at this rate would probably maybe last us 1 year, and then we're down to very little on our fund balance. So that's my concern.
My recommendation in light of what you said is, right now, if you're saying, and I agree with you, we're about $60,000 to the good, is not to add any of those other things, but let Ms. Moore, when she does this, the custodial transfer, work on that so it's not maybe necessarily the 7.45, but to get us back to 0. And that way we leave that extra 60,000 in ESSERs as, again, a safety net and something that's not encumbered right now. but we adjust that to keep it at a net zero. That way the fund balance stays the same and the most amount stays in ESSER at the same time.
Right.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that all the counties and all the school systems was given ESSER money was to help especially, rural counties or counties that don't have large funds, like the larger systems like Mecklenburg and Wake and Forsyth, to just kind of ease some of the burdens for a while. And, what are you doing? You're going to take it out of the fund balance now, or you can wait 2 years and take it out? You're still going to have custodians. They're still going to have to be in the schools. But you're just trying to ease your burden right now of the cost. And then, who knows what's going to happen in 2 years? So why not use that ability, while the state and the federal government, is actually trying to help schools.
And I will say, as part of that advocacy meeting I had last weekend, or 2 weeks ago now in Washington, that was the tone of the superintendents nationwide, is that while COVID was obviously a bad thing that none of us would wish on our worst enemies, the good thing that came out of it was the ESSER funds.
That's right.
And we talked about how we really don't know where we would be, again, as a nation, where we are without those funds, and a need to redo that in some way, shape, or form moving forward, that the federal funding would increase, where to help states out, because again, your destination shouldn't be, your education shouldn't be based on your zip code, based on your tax base.
That's right.
Everyone deserves a quality education.
But right now, it is based on your zip code.
Absolutely.
And we can't really much get around it, but when they're offering help and they're handing it to you, why not use it when you can? I know we're all thinking like, it's a bank account, and we put money in our bank, and, instead of going on a big vacation to Aruba, we're just going to have a stay vacation and save the money. But we can't look at it like that, I don't think, when we have the ESSER funds and they've been made available. And besides, with our financial director and our superintendent recommending this, I don't think they would steer us wrong.
Okay. All right, so do we have a consensus here? Mike, Mr. Rogers, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'm a Mike type of guy. Been Attila the Hun earlier, so might as well. Yeah, I'm good with that. And I would say put the 60 back in.
Leave the cuts like we have them, the supplements and the increases, leave the cuts like we have it, and then save the 60, zero it out back into the ESSER funds.
I'm not as worried as much about saving the ESSER funds, because we've got to find things that ESSER funds apply for. There's a lot of only ifs in ESSER, so I'm fine with building fund balance, but.
Okay. Ms. Knight?
I'm okay with the recommendations that you
Okay.
mentioned, yes, sir.
Ms. Messick?
Okay, if we're doing just what we've said, then I'm okay with that.
Okay. Mr. Bryant?
I'm okay with,
Okay. And I'm okay with that too. I think that's a good compromise for the whole board, and I am glad that we can save the teacher coach positions. I do think that the board has made ourselves very clear here tonight that we're looking at our test scores, our numbers. We want to see those improve as much as possible. I've always been from the camp of the better your product is, the more people you'll have want to come to your schools. So I think the better we can make our product in our schools, the more people, the more students that we have want to cross over the county line, the more students that we have that come back from homeschooling, whether that's been improving our test scores or making our schools safer, better facilities, whatever we can do to make a better product. I think that's the way we need to approach it, and produce the best product that we can produce. I think when we used our ESSER funds to purchase our interactive boards was a big step forward in our technology. So I think we've made some good moves, and I want us to continue to do that. And I do appreciate the leadership of Ms. Moore and Dr. Rice and our numbers and our budgets and walking us through some of this and getting us to the point that we are today. So everybody keep up the good work. Everybody is working hard. I know everybody in this room works tremendously hard. It's a thankless job sometimes, right? We work hours and hours and hours, and you come in and the board's, beating us up because, we want something more. But we know everybody works hard and does a great job, and I'd say just keep doing what we're doing and let's just push a little bit harder. So we've got a consensus here on what our budget, do we need a motion to approve this, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Got to move to action.
Move to action to approve, yes.
yeah,
Make a
okay.
motion to move
So
to
this will be action item E, approval of, this will be approval of 22-23 budget.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Board, the next item on the agenda is the capital outlay budget. You've had that here. You are aware of what was told to us when we went up the hill, to empty out the account, if you will, which they were using as a safety net for us, of the $3,665,000. Our recommendation is to go through line 22 of our priorities, and that would leave unbudgeted $1.6 million for emergencies. That would be our recommendation to the board for your consideration.
Is that, are we gonna leave item number 4?
Item number 4, I'm sorry, yes, item number 4 would be changed to a $50,000 repair. I'm sorry, yes.
Would you repeat that?
That instead of replacing the Pine Hall roof right now for $750,000, to make that a repair of the roof for $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
And go through line item,
22.
okay.
Now, that's a $50,000 savings
That's in my
account
book.
as the roof needs repair.
Didn't hear.
I'm sorry?
I've seen it. but
That's a
I've not-
$50,000, basically, savings account as the roof needs repair.
Yes.
We're not saying we're gonna spend $50,000
Right,
repair,
right,
it's
correct.
good.
We'll go
I just
up.
don't want it, I don't want people to think that, oh, well, originally it was 750, now they're gonna fix it for 50.
Right.
Now, that's 50,000 to cover
patch
this
as we go.
year's
Yes,
leaks as they come up.
yes, sir.
And I think we mentioned at the last meeting too, there's probably 10 or 12 items that's on this list as we're going down through number 76. There's about 10 or 12 items on here that are fairly small items. For example, item number 66, remove concrete blocks in the parking spaces at Poplar Springs. We've got in there $1,500.
Okay, I bet.
So I would like to see us maybe go through, pick out a few of those items that are small in repair cost. And I think I identified maybe last time 10 or 12 of them for a total of about 100,000 that we might could add in and go ahead and knock those off the list. I don't know that we want to get into doing that, trying to decide on that tonight, but maybe as the time goes over the next month or so, we can maybe identify a few of those and come back and try to take care of some of those $1,500, $3,000 repairs that would be good to just go ahead and check them off our list.
I suggest we just move their recommendation to action for tonight,
Yeah,
and then have Ricky generate a list of the low-hanging fruit that gets us the most bang for the buck,
yeah. So,
without blowing the bank.
yeah, we can work on that and, maybe 100,000 or so. I think
Yeah.
identified 10 or 12 or
I would
14
say
items.
start with some of them marked as security. Right?
Yeah.
Well, we may want to wait and see
I
what the
see
state
two.
budget comes back.
Yeah, it's
'cause
like I
it
said,
has
this is not
security.
something we have to do right away, but in the next, maybe the next month or two, we might, we might just look at some of those things.
Exterior.
All right, so, on the capital budget, do we want to move, the recommendation, to, the action agenda to be action item F?
Make a motion to move it.
I'll second.
Okay, so that'll be the 22-23 capital outlay budget as recommended by the superintendent. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So that brings us to our action agenda. Action item A, approval of personnel and coaching.
I make a motion to approve with the exception of the one that I mentioned earlier, that I would
Recuse yourself.
recuse myself from, or, yes.
Okay,
So I make a motion to approve with that exception, so you would vote on the other separately.
exactly. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, approval of the personnel,
I make a motion to approve the personnel with the exemption or exception that Ms. Knight took.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, action item B would be the E-rate Cat 2 approval.
I make a motion, we approve the E-rate Cat 2.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that brings us to action item C, 22-23 dairy bid.
I make a motion to approve the dairy bid.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Action item D would be 22-23 Head Start Meals contract.
I make a motion that we approve the Head Start contract for 22-23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Action item E would be the 22-23 budget as proposed.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And action item F would be the 22-23 capital outlay budget as proposed by the superintendent.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that brings us to our action agenda and to information and announcements. Looks like we have Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Board members, in your packet, you'll note a few important dates that I want to draw your attention to. Our next meeting will be a work session on August the 8th at 6 o'clock p.m. I also want to let you know that our early college will begin on Monday, August the 8th, which will be here before we know it. And I want to thank our principals and our custodians for their work and the teachers for preparing for students' arrival. So we look forward to having them back on campus soon. Convocation will be held on August the 19th. Please mark your calendars for that date, and Ms. Boljak and Dr. Rice will be in touch about your role in that convocation. But we look forward to having you at that event. And then in your packet, you have fundraising requests, discretionary days, as well as start and end times for the upcoming school year and calendars. And that's all that I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion? We have a, we need to go back into a closed session. Motion to resume closed session.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So we'll stand in recess for 5 minutes until we go into closed session. Do you need any of those numbers?